he got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way from the shore. Then Jesus sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. When Jesus had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet, if you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' feet, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish that were taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching people." When they had brought their boats to shore, they left everything and followed him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
That gospel is the gospel appointed for today. And every once in a while, the gospel falls into place really well. And that gospel is absolutely amazing for an annual meeting. It couldn't be better. All the details in that gospel are exactly what I would be giving you a lengthy, wordy, boring report. And boring is not good in winter, especially on a Sunday morning. So I have put it in the context of Bible study, and then we will be looking at what we are thinking of as options for St. Michael's Church for the future. This is the 75th year, by the way, this October, to the day. So a good time to be thinking about what the next 75 years will bring. So welcome to Bible study. Have your Bible study hats on, boys and girls. All right, next slide, please. The miraculous catch of fish, which is what this account is called in Luke, is unique. Luke only has it. It puts the context for being called into community, and it strengthens the idea that the 12 should, but won't always, function as a team. In the story, Jesus begins calling his disciples, but they won't be named and numbered until chapter 6. Luke is interesting this way. Mark just gets to work, and Matthew names them, and off they go. Luke draws them in, as Jesus drawing the disciples into calling. Next. So what is happening as the story begins? Anyone? What's happening? He is teaching, right? Exactly. He has been in the area of Lake Gennesaret. He's been teaching, and he gets into a boat to preach. Next slide. They gather to preach, so he gets commandeered, actually, without permission. Jesus didn't need to ask for permission or forgiveness. He grabs a boat, one of two pulled ashore, so he can preach from the lake towards the people, because that's an acoustic enhancement. The water helps bounce the sound. Whose boat does he use? Peter's. Yes. So we probably know right away Peter is going to be central to the story, as indeed he will turn out to be. Peter goes with Jesus, by the way. It's not clear at the beginning, but by the end of the story you understand Peter and others are in this boat. Goes with Jesus because someone has to row while Jesus is preaching, otherwise they drift away. When Jesus finishes speaking, what happens next? And you can look at your books. This is not a closed book testament. What happens next? Well, Jesus tells Peter, the very next thing that happens, so you have to get the details in order. Jesus tells Peter to fish in deeper water and he will have better luck. But Peter hasn't asked him for advice. But Jesus just says this. There's no interaction with Jesus about the fact that they've been fishing all night, which you'll find next, you see. We fished all night, over and over. This is Peter now. Jesus says, put out into deeper water. Peter says, well, all right, we'll try. We fished all night and didn't get anything. But if you say so, we'll move to where there are probably no fish. Now, Peter didn't say this because, next slide, the listeners would have known that fishing in the time of Jesus in these rather shallow lakes was done close to shore. The fish came into shore. They were not in deeper water. They would have known this. So Jesus is saying it, and Peter's acquiescing, but there would have been that aha moment in the listeners, you see. So that's okay. We'll try this. But the fish are usually more abundant close to shore and easier to catch. Next slide. So Peter lowers the nets from the boat as Jesus had told him, and what happens? Next slide. Yeah. Fish. Fish. So many fish that the gang in Peter's boat, Peter and Jesus are among both, call to the other boat for help. There are only two boats in the story. And here you have, obviously, Jesus in the bow, and the fish just can't wait to get out of the water. They're so excited that we probably can hear Jesus. And the second boat is there. When everyone is safely back on shore, Peter, who always speaks for us doing the thinking, Peter is us, falls on his knees and blurts out, okay, Jesus, I'm sinful, we're sinful, and we don't feel we can handle this kind of fishing on a regular basis. Too much expectation, too much excitement. And Jesus calmly replies, you've got nothing to worry about. You're going to be doing great things. So next, there are two miracles in the story, actually. And the fish really aren't the miracle. I mean, they are, they aren't. I mean, that's the obvious one. The first is that Peter and the others are willing to follow Jesus' advice to try fishing where they least expected there to be fish. That's the first miracle. They didn't say no. They didn't say we're not strong enough. They didn't say we tried, we just don't want to do it. They just said, okay, we'll do it. The second miracle is, if it weren't for the partnering of the two boats, they came together, the two boats. The great catch of fish wouldn't have been brought to shore, they wouldn't have succeeded, and they might have lost the whole thing. Fish the nets, the group of boats. It was the partnering that saved the day. So there's another way to look at this story. We want to leave aside the religious and theological teachings, which we'll get back to soon. But that is as follows. What is the definition of futility? There's another version of this, but this is the one highlight. What is the definition of futility? Anyone know? I did not pay LA to say that. Just a full disclosure. Yes, next slide. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting it. So, the moment you've all been waiting for, and why you're here today. What does the miraculous catch of fish have to do with St. Michael's Church? And that's us, by the way. Sorry, there's a little reproduction of it. It's a nice sunny day from the front there from Sunnydale. St. Michael's was gathered when the waters around it teemed with fish, so it was easy to catch fish. They swam in happily and plentifully. One out of every two Episcopal churches was built after World War II, in the 20 years between the end of the war and the mid-1960s. One out of every two. We went on the building boom, much to our regret. Do you know what, sorry, back up.
Sorry.
Do you know where that is?
You don't know, right?
Correct. Right out there. And those are fish. Millions of fish. This is 1952. Kate and Pat have been going through all of the photos and getting things organized for the 75th. They found this one. This is one of the reasons the church was built, quite largely. Baby boom, lots of children, People are in church. It's McCarthyism. You don't want to be a communist. You want to be a Christian. Very much cultural endorsement of going to church. And as we'll see, a lot less to do on Sunday morning. There just wasn't anything. So that's taken right outside Yeoman Hall. Probably the second edition has gone on. I don't know if that's an outside door or whether the hallway continues. But there they are. A couple of the acolytes are hooping it up in the front, as acolytes always do. And there they are. And I think at some point in the mid-50s, we had 650 children in the church school. Okay. Yeah. The fish catchers called churches were all eager to build big nets, so they did. Once you have built it, you've got to take care of it. Can everyone see this? I know the reproduction isn't terribly good. I have the original. Does anyone know what this is?
Rendering of St. Michael.
The first design, correct. It's the first design for St. Michael's. And a good one it was. And now I know it's a little grainy, but let me point out a couple of details. We don't know if this is from Mac or from Sunningdale. I suspect it's from Sunningdale, but we're not sure. The bell tower is the central design element that anchors, it connects the church to the right, the parish house to the left, which is a two-story parish house. The lounge is kind of that one-story bump out partway down. The altar and sanctuary, as you're coming from the church to the right, you see how the roof drops down? That's called a recessed chancel. The altar would be there, and then the little building around the very end of the church, I think, was the sacristy. There was a principal door in the parish house, a principal door into the bell tower, and one from the rear of the bell tower to get in. Now, this was not built. We don't know why. It may have been too much of a structure for the ground. It's possible that getting footings would have been an issue. There's also a rumor that Christ Church Grosse Pointe did not want us to upstage them architecturally. Now, I don't know if that's just sour grapes or whether it's true, but because we were a mission of Christ Church, we do have a relationship. This would have been a much more impressive Gothic revival structure, stone-clad, I think slate roof, a more compact building and a much more striking building than we've got. But nonetheless, it would have been big, and it would have needed care. So maybe it's just as well it didn't run fast. Next slide. Then things changed. The number of fish declined, the number of different kinds of fish catchers increased. This is over time. The fish could spend their time doing lots of things, Sundays included. Now, this is an actual calendar, and the word Michigan appears right in the middle somewhere, of a family plotting out 1 month's worth of activities. This is a real calendar in colored ink to keep everybody straight. Sound familiar? Yes. And there are other reasons church attendance has declined. It's not just that people are busy, but that's part of it. There's other social forces and concerts going on. But take a look at that calendar. And you want to say, could you pop by church for an hour on Sunday? Well, we'll see if we can shoehorn it in. And Sunday is on the left. So things have changed. They just have. The birth rate is lower. Church is not at the forefront of everybody's agenda, although it could be on more. But we have competition. Next. So churches began struggling to fill their old nets with fewer fish and keep the buildings up and going, which continue to be older and therefore more expensive to maintain. Something had to give, and that something was usually the building. In a battle with the building will always win. Next. But one day, at its annual meeting, the folks at St. Michael's Church heard the story of the fish, and they thought, and can you all see the babies? I'll let you read the babies. There may be more babies. I like that for good English. There may be more babies, but there's a few to get you thinking. Deeper waters, find new fish, partnering. Next. We could partner with fish catchers who are meeting needs we can't meet and yet need help with their fishing. We could make new nets at the same time we repair our old nets, and it would be like the boats coming together in that story of the miraculous catch. This is a whole different approach. Rather than saying we are a church and we only do certain things, we say we are a church and we'd like to do many different things. We'd like to talk to you about your coming to use our building. We'd like to talk to you about having a program here. We'd like to talk to you about renovations. Urban churches with large buildings are doing this. They're thinking more broadly and expanding the definition of church. Next. You're going to hear more about the finances in a moment from our treasurer, but contemplate these figures. Our projected income from pledging $215,000, the cost of the buildings and grounds will be $102,000, and the compensation having me on the premises will be slightly over $103,000. So, out of your pledged income, the two largest pieces are clergy support in the building. There are many, many churches that only have to function on pledged income. So if it weren't for some money in the bank and some endowment, that's all you could do with $250,000 in your present setting. Next. So, with those figures in mind, with today's gospel message, the net mending that we must do sooner rather than later is to reduce the cost of building the grounds. There is no alternative. Well, there is. We'll see. There is an alternative, which is not nice to think about. This is a stewardship crisis. Too many dollars are spent on bricks and mortar, too little on program and ministry. And we have some areas to consider. There are several possibilities in what we call redevelop, reconfigure, reimagine. One is to redevelop the property in whole or part with another nonprofit or for-profit entity for a mixed-use campus. We continue to operate in the church. At the same time, the other users operate in their areas. This would be substantial rebuilding of the present structure, but we would have construction that meets the present needs of St. Michael's. In other words, ADA compliant, up to code, energy efficient, et cetera, et cetera. Now, keep in mind, these are only ideas that have been discussed with the vestry, and also, I might add, with Bishop Perry. I went to see Bishop Perry to share with her my anxiety about St. Michael's and my concerns for the future. She is enormously supportive and is quite interested in it. Trust me, she's done her homework. She knows more about us than I knew about us. She's been on the website, she knew about the labyrinth, she just is one very sharp person. And she said, let's continue the conversation. I will share this with my staff and get back to me after annual meeting. So we have a very good ally in Bishop Perry, who did something similar to this in Chicago, not the same scale. Another possibility is demolish all or some of the present building and rebuild on site. So this would be, we kind of do this ourselves without partnering. The same kind of upgrades could be made, we gain quite a bit. The challenge might be funding this alone or with loans. So this could be done, we have to figure out how to pay for it. But another idea of being here. Next. This is the original part of St. Michael's. The first, it was built in 4 sections, this is the first section. Wouldn't it be nice just to have that to worry about? One furnace, one hot water heater. As you can see, it's the church, except the narthex hasn't been constructed. The extension, that's the back wall of the church was the outside wall, the bell tower, of course. And then as you come down this way, you have the present conference room, furnace room, the bathrooms, the outside door. That was the building. Of course, they all were land, and of course there was sand here. It must have been the beach. I don't know how white land is there. And that's the original construction. Oh, we built the golf course. We built on the golf course. That's a good point. We took the sand track away. But there you are. It's rather nice and it's very compact. Now, I'm not saying we would reduce to that, but anything's possible when you start rebuilding. But that's the original building. Another possibility is to merge into another congregation. Another congregation merges into us. We come together, stay here. That would increase financial resources, but we still have building issues without changes. And then we have relocate. We close, sell the property, and merge with another congregation, or we close, sell the property, and use the proceeds to construct a new building or rehab an existing church somewhere else. Now, there's one more possibility, which is not my favorite, but it is one that many churches just kind of fall into because they can't see their way clear for anything else. And that is to preserve your funding, you move to a priest-in-charge arrangement, which means you have a clergy on contract part-time year by year, which would save you quite a bit of money. And then you continue funding the deficits, and we'll hear more about that from Cheryl in a moment. You continue funding the deficits with cash reserves, draw down on unrestricted funds, and keep going. But there's a possibility you would run out of people before you run out of money in this model. It's not a growth model. But it is unfortunately the solution many churches fall into by default. They just end up in this spiral. Next. So, what are we going to do? Well, here's things we're going to continue going in the meantime. Mission engagement, which is outreach. The bishop was very excited about these two things. She asked me, tell me about your outreach, I told her. Then she said, what are you doing in your neighborhood and community? In your neighborhood. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, and I mentioned the luncheon program, and she starts bouncing when she gets excited on her cheek. Tell me more. So I filled her in about that. And then I also said, and we are trying, COVID and everything, but we're going to hopefully develop a relationship with the middle school, which happens to be next door, maybe a pizza lunch. She said, fantastic, fantastic. She said, yes, yes, yes. Relational mission engagement is what you need to be doing more of. The other piece that I'm proposing this morning is to expand the Vision 75 scheme with some more people and start evaluating some of these options and keep it posted. So I'm not throwing it all out into the ozone. I'm saying this is what we could think about. Next slide. Jesus inspired the fish catchers. He didn't do the fishing for them. That's the hard part. Notice where Jesus is in the bow again, blessing the fish and encouraging and giving. It was his idea to go into deep water, but Jesus is, I'm sure he pitched in to a degree, but Jesus wasn't going to wave his hand and make it all better. It's up to you. And that's where this is the year of decision. If we don't get people together now to have a plan, I'm not sure how much longer we have enough people to plan it, if you know what I mean. So I'm very serious about this. But that's going to take a lot of hands-on if we're going to survive and thrive. I would be very happy if you have any initial thoughts. I would